You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
And I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. We are joined today by our dear friend, Adam Yo. He's a contributing writer to No Echo, an excellent music, news, hardcore-based website. Definitely check out everything that Adam writes over there. Even if you don't like the band, his writing's really good. And what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the year 1998 and the follow-up to their smash hit And Out Come the Wolves. It's Rancid's Life Won't Wait, which is a interesting record.
It's a very dense record. For context, my internet decided to go out multiple times on here in case there's an odd conversation note that you're like, what? I'm going to try and edit around it so it's seamless, but just in case, keep that in mind that I dropped out twice during recording. So hopefully if I repeat myself, it's not too redundant.
Yeah. I think there's only one notable real circle back, but
yeah,
it was worth it. It was a good conversation regardless.
Yes. It's a great conversation. We love talking to Adam, and this whole conversation is just really fun. I really like talking about this record. And then if you head over to our Patreon, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. That is, this week we should probably do. I feel like we've done a 1998 chart dive before, so we'll probably wind up doing an I'm Listening or a News of the World. Just depends on what each of us have ready to go for that, but.
Or maybe a Master Punk. We'll see.
Yeah. And then also every Friday I do a new release Friday bonus audio where I take 10 minutes and talk about a couple albums that came out that week. I also have some Moon Pies from Misfits videos up there as well. I finally was able to get a Mountain Dew Pitch Black, so I was able to film that and post it. And there's a Starry up there as well. And I have another one recorded, but I haven't posted it yet. But all of that you can get for $1 over there. And if you want to support the show even more and choose what album we talk about on the show, you can go to our $10 tier. That you can pick literally anything punk related-ish within reason. We have veto power on a couple of things, but make us talk about anything. We got one coming up soon that's definitely on the more obscure side of things, but that's patreon.com/punklottopod. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at punklottopod, punklottopod@gmail.com, and a voicemail at 202-688-PUNK. And I think that'll do it. And hopefully you enjoy this show.
Yeah, a notable, one of the big bands that we haven't talked about before, really in depth on this show. Mm-hmm. So this is it's kind of a, I think this sounds like, to me, it felt like a high watermark.
Yeah,
for the show.
Yeah, Rancid are definitely one of the big names that we finally checked off the list. So, all right, everyone, enjoy the show and this conversation with Adam. So we're joined here today by our good friend Adam Yo. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been a minute, so I'm really excited to be back. It's going to be a conversation today.
Yeah, we got a good one. I was trying to remember the last time you were on, and was it last summer that you filled in for Dylan?
I think it was. I think it was longer. Yeah, I think it was the summer before.
It was the summer before.
That was when I first fell in love with Paramore, right? Wasn't it that time? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you would have been on the best of for 2021 that we would have done in January then.
Yes, for sure. I think I popped on there.
Wow, that's so long. It feels so long ago, but also it didn't feel like that much time had passed,
2023, my friends.
Yeah.
This is the correct time to be talking about best albums of 2022.
Yeah.
As opposed to September,
I had originally intended to have you on, and then literally everything happened all at once. At the end of the year, I got COVID at the very end of the year, and like kind of ruined a lot of my recording plans. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, we could finally do it, but it's gonna be like now like extra late. So I was like, you know what? Let's just have everyone who I wanted to get a recording with. They just get to come back on the show very soon. So that's why you're here again with us.
I'm so sorry you got COVID, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. I mean, COVID was weird. Have you ever had it?
No, knock on wood. I've probably been around it countless times, but no, not as of yet. And I don't hear good things.
It's
hot take.
It's the strangest illness I've ever had. Like, I've definitely been sicker, but like, I don't know, maybe it's just the mental thing of being like, I've been dodging it for 3 years and it finally caught me, you know. But there's like a mental aspect to it that's very weird. I think it's just because you're like, I have COVID now. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
Failed.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the word that we've heard more than literally any other word in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
You're like, it's theoretical until it actually happens. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like, who even gets COVID anymore? You know, like that. That's so last year.
I always want to get like a not super dangerous, but kind of weird, sickness. Like, what's rickets? I don't even know what rickets is. Or like, isn't there something with hoof in the title? What's that one?
There's foot and mouth disease.
Yeah, I want that one for sure.
I've heard that one like sucks. Like,
I'll bet.
It's like, it's funny. There's a wrestler from Japan who had foot and mouth disease like at the tail end of last year, and it kicked his ass. He was out for months. Like, I don't know if it's like a thing that you have to treat for a really long time.
Sounds like a dirty gym sickness for sure.
You could get scurvy. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. At an Ailstorm concert, Yeah. Is that the right one? Is it Ailstorm or Hailstorm?
There's two, right?
Yeah, they're both bands, right? I don't know.
Hailstorm's the pirate one.
Oh, yeah. Hail or ale?
Ale.
Ale.
Right?
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because I think Hailstorm is the butt rock one.
Okay.
Are they butt rock? I thought they're power metal.
It's meteorological hardcore. Is that what a Hailstorm is?
Or maybe I'm thinking of maybe Hailstorms. No, Hailstorm. They are from Pennsylvania.
Lead singer Lizzie Hale.
Oh, Hailstorm. Okay.
And her drummer brother RJ Hale, but it's spelled AREJAY.
One of the second suggested searches is, why is Hailstorm canceled?
Oh, are they? I thought it was Ailstorm was canceled. Man, I can't keep up.
But I think this is pulling up an article about canceled tour dates. So.
Oh. Yeah,
Are
I think
Ailstorm canceled?
Yeah, they got hit with some serious, one of those. Well, I better not talk out of school.
Okay.
Oh.
Lest I get foot in mouth disease.
The Glory Hammer and Ailstorm drama, misogyny and racism.
There you go.
This is on Metal Blast.
That sounds very legitimate. So
2021. So.
Who knew that a pirate-themed Scottish metal band would be racist?
I know.
Isn't it like what Iced Earth? Like one of the guys in that band was a January 6er.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And he was one of wasn't he one of the big, photo op kind of guys? Like, right in the middle of the hall. Yeah, he's in all the pictures.
Like him and what's his name, Ariel Pink,
and the guy from King 810.
I don't know that one.
That was.
I can't think, but I think he filmed a video there, in that intense troll fashion.
I know that the pro wrestler Chris Jericho's wife was there.
Oh, Jesus.
That checks out.
There's photos of her there. Oh man, I don't know how we got on this tangent.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So, we were going to have you on to talk about the best albums of 2022. And we thought, now with even though it's, nearly the end of January. Actually, it will be like the first week of February when the episode goes up.
Yeah.
But it's perfect time to talk about your favorite records of the year. So I thought we would give the floor to you to let you talk about like some of the ones you had intended on talking about with us.
Yeah, happy to do it. I'll run through them quickly. A lot of these albums have likely gotten plenty of coverage and buzz. I will say this is the year it finally happened. I got into Ghost. Number 10 is Impera by Ghost. I bought into the full conceit of this whole thing, and it rules. It's like Jim Steinman composing a bunch of Meatloaf songs and Def Leppard. I don't know, but I love it. I just love it. So very much in the same lane. Drug Church, Hygiene, number 9.
Yeah.
It's
equally theatrical.
Yeah. It's in and out in like 20 minutes, it feels like. But love that one. Kind of a surprise one for me. The LS Dunes, Past Lives. Really love that. Anything Anthony Green touches is going to at least hit my inbox, so to speak. And I love this one. Just hearing him go a little harder and heavier and louder than he had in recent years. Number 7, Speed, A Gang Called Speed. Australia, hardcore. Everyone likely knows how good this is at this point. Number 6, on the same lines, and I know you guys love this one. End It, Unpleasant Living.
Hell yeah.
I think I'm required to love this as a Baltimorean.
Yeah. Are you what is it? BCHC?
Yeah, BCHC. I am totally not BCHC at all. I am not the target market. All these guys are a lot cooler and tougher than I am. But it rules. It's just this is the type of hardcore that I like. Tough without being dunderheaded, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's great. My favorite hip hop album of the year, number 5, is Rome Streets, Kiss the Ring. I guess I don't know if he was part of that whole Griselda thing that I don't fully grasp or understand. I don't know if he's from Buffalo. I just love this album this year. That's my big hip hop one. Number 4, Death Western, Spirit World. Kind of like maybe a hardcore version of Ghost. There's very much like a concept to it. I know the singer has like a few novels centered around this whole Western hardcore cycle.
Huh. It's like a Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah, right. Oh, that one just missed out. Love that record too. Number 3, High Vis, Blending. I don't think I need to give that any more attention.
We got Oasis Core.
Yeah, man, it's incredible. Yeah, it is. It's like that Manchester scene mixed with a little bit of hardcore. Just love that record. Number 2, this was a surprise for me. Discovered the Reds, Pinks, and Purples.
Jangly shoegazy kind of thing.
Yeah, just jangly, more acoustic based.
Okay.
Just singer songwriter. I think he's incredibly prolific. There's probably like 2 or 3 albums from last year, but this one's called Summer at Land's End, which I just find hilarious because I think about the brand Land's End. It's just funny. I just imagine like spending your summer working in the stock room at the Land's End outlet or something, but probably means something different. I think it's San Francisco. But and number 1, another surprise for me, British band who changed singers. They're called Blood Command. The singer, I think she was in a band called Pagan, who only put out 1 album, but it's called Praise Armageddonism is the album, and it just rules. It's endlessly catchy. It blends a lot of like pop choruses with hardcore and punk. It's a really cool blend, and I think it's something that I hadn't heard done to this level before. So what if that sucks? Give it back to me. What are you thinking?
No, none of it sucks. Like you had a couple things on there that I liked as well, and some other stuff I just hadn't heard myself, but. You know what I love about doing the end of year audio and getting like all the friends to come on and talk about their picks is almost everyone has completely different picks. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if it's just because like the individuals that we associate with and have had on the show multiple times, just like not the most common picks, I don't want this to sound like I'm being like, we like different stuff, like we're not mainstream, I just mean like everybody has a wide variety of things that they listen to, and it's not just what me and Dylan listen to, and it's not just what Dave listens to, and not just what you listen to. It's like what everybody does is very, very little crossover. There's usually only like one or two each per person.
But it's interesting because I think at least what attracted me initially to your podcast and what continues to do so is that both of you kind of approach music as if you're still hoping to hear your favorite album of all time. If that makes sense. Like it never seems cynical. There's not like there's just not the same quality of stuff coming out these days. None of that American hardcore, this thing died in 1980, blah, whatever. So I always really appreciate that you both approach new music that way, which is really cool. And I think it brings in people that do the same.
Well, thank you for saying that. But I also do. Yeah, I think everybody that we have on is like the type of people who search for new stuff. Like you obviously, you write for No Echo, so you're constantly like getting new things to review. So obviously you're always on the lookout for something. And yeah, like just about everyone else, like they either like run a label or a web store, so they need stuff for stock. So you're always looking. And then writers are always, on the lookout. Dave's a writer and a podcaster, so he's always talking about different. Yeah, so it is like the type of people that we, I guess, associate with the most are also the same type of people who just want to dig and find new stuff. So maybe that's why I like talking to writers and other podcasters and label people a little more than musicians.
A lot of times you find musicians who are creative and definitely driven to create new things, but are maybe not exploring music as much. And they're or at least at the moment, I feel like there's the tendency for a musician to be in like a phase where they're like, I'm only listening to like these two bands and that's it. Because that's all I have room for. Like that's what's influencing me. All of my other time is spent like making music.
Dylan, I wanted to ask you this. It brings up a good point. As someone who writes music and is in a band, do you find that what you tend to be working on is in a vacuum, or do you think it's more informed by this is what I'm listening to right now, or does it work in the opposite? Like does what you're creating feed what you ultimately listen to in that time of your life?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I definitely write music thinking of I'm trying to write music that sounds like music that I would want to listen to or that I am listening to. So there's definitely looking to like what I'm looking for. But there are also times of like I want to write music that maybe sounds like this or has this kind of influence. I should go listen to more music that might spur ideas or might like teach me something about, the technique of playing techniques or composition or tone or whatever it might be that. Okay. So I think it's both. I think it can be both.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't come entirely from being like within. Like I'm just like, I'm, brimming with ideas. And
I'm a vessel for the.
I just don't have that much theoretical knowledge to do that.
But, I also think that it's an interesting question. Would people make music if they didn't like music? If you weren't fans of all these things, would you make it? Maybe, but probably not. I don't know. I don't make music. It's endlessly fascinating to me as someone who has less than zero musical ability. So
I always say that I played bass in a band and I'm not a bassist because I'm not a bassist. I don't know how to actually play the bass. I'm just like, what am I playing? I ask the guitarist and he tells me what I'm playing. Like, okay, I can remember to do that in that order.
Justin, I'm going to jump out and say this though. If you played bass with a band at any time, regardless of your talent level, you're a bassist, my friend. People still consider Sex Pistols guy. They still consider him a bassist, right? Kind of. You're better. I would guarantee it. At this moment, you're better than he ever was.
At this moment, of course.
Yeah, that's true. He might be better now because he's turned off. So Tiny side note, and I don't want to run down this alley. Did you happen to see any of the Sex Pistols show?
The TV show?
The TV show? No.
We talked about doing it for the Patreon, but we didn't.
You should. If for no other reason, they couldn't get clearance on the song, so they had to write all fake Sex Pistols songs. New fake Sex Pistols songs. Worth the price of admission alone. I'll end it there.
Is there a soundtrack?
I don't, there may be. It'd be worth a look on streaming to see if there's the songs they put together for that on there.
The show was called what? Pistol? That was it?
Yeah. Yeah. Even that's embarrassing. I'll stop.
We considered it. We were definitely like, we should do this. It's a punk thing. It's coming on weekly. Maybe we could like watch this. It's on Hulu, which we have. It's like something easily accessible, but
it's a good director too, right? It's like, is it Danny Boyle? Am I making that up?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we should still do it. Now that I know that they didn't have the rights to the songs, that makes it more interesting to me.
Oh, so much. I wouldn't have watched it otherwise, but it made it worth every moment. So enjoy.
Yeah, we might have to do that for the Patreon for sure, for real. Well, so we've chatted for a little bit about everything. So let's kind of roll into format. So for the guest's sake, or for the listener's sake rather, the premise of our show is we assign our guests a year and they choose one album from that year. So I gave you the year 1998. And before we get into the album that you actually selected for us today, are there any that you were considering or you were on the fence like, maybe we could do that one?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple that jumped out. This End Hits by Fugazi is actually my favorite Fugazi album. And it seems to get kind of, they have such a big discography, the latter albums, other than what's the end? The Argument? Is that the final album?
Yeah.
That seems to be retroactively considered their best, which I find kind of wild. You'll see that in a lot of lists or in a lot of ratings. But End Hits, for whatever reason, I think it's the first one that I bought as it came out. Right. So that was, I think that happens a lot with the albums that end up being my favorite. We'll talk more about the one that I ultimately chose. That's why it was one of my favorites. The other one that I was considering is Killing on Adrenaline, Dying Fetus. Probably just because of the Maryland connection. But this was a big deal. In my high school, this was a huge deal. And I still love this album. I wish the production was a little different. I know that Jason, who went on to form Misery Index, I think left after this one, or maybe the one after. So it's more of a Maryland classic. I don't know the death metal scene very well, so it might be considered a classic in a way I'm not aware of. But
they're still active, right?
Yes.
Or yeah. They're like a thing. Like they're a what do you call it? Like a legacy act at this point. They've been around forever.
The death metal institution.
Yeah. What is it that what's the game the world has never not needed this sound? Let's see. Are these one of the memory hole bands? I guess they're not really.
What, Dying Fetus?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just a very different lane. They're probably one of those death metal bands I would assume could fill a pretty decent sized room, right?
Yeah. Yeah, most likely, yeah. They look like they put out albums at like not a high rate. It looks like there's like 3 to 4 years between each album for the most part. Which is a good little, reliable level to put something out. I think bands tend to last longer when they release that way too.
I do too.
Instead of being like, oh yeah, we had 2 back to back, or like every other year there's a new one,
You burn out,
Yeah.
The only other one that I considered, just because of the name, I've never heard this album before, and I'm still going to have to go back and check it out. Gasp, I guess the name of the band is Gasp, Drome Trailer of Puzzle Zoo People. What in the world is that?
I don't know that one at all. Like, let's see.
Nothing. That's deep. That's 37 on the list here, but.
Oh, okay. 37. Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's
never heard of it.
Look at all the subgenres. It's power violence, experimental rock, sound collage, noise rock, tape music, noise, and emo violence. And it's described as psychedelic, surreal, eclectic, atmospheric, chaotic, mysterious, sampling, and heavy.
Nice.
That's gonna be weird.
The descriptors are usually the best part of Rate Your Music. Pedro the Lion is lonely. So there you go.
What is my favorite album on here? Americana by The Offspring. What do they say?
Solid.
Instant classic. Where'd it go? I missed it.
There were a couple jams on this, right? As I remember.
This one had Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Okay. Still looking for one.
What is it? Is it Feeling? No, not Feeling. Feelings is on here, but that wasn't a big one. It was The Kids Aren't All Right. That's the one. That's kind of a banger, I think. That's the serious song on the album.
Yeah.
And Why Don't You Get a Job? The other novelty hit.
Man.
I'm an Offspring apologetic, so though I can't defend anything post like 2003 or something like that.
Yeah, Ixnay I'm a big fan of. Obviously Smash, right?
Yeah.
Which this is going to blow your mind. I didn't listen to that album until 2021. Nuts.
That's probably when I listened to it for the first time.
Really? Really?
No, it might have been last year, actually, where I was like actually listened to it beginning to end and was like, because, you know plenty of these songs.
For sure, yeah.
You just heard them so many times, but...
Was your mind blown when it got to the Road Rage song?
Man. Do they still play that one?
I don't know. It's one of those ones, though, like, I think if you were the right age and you heard that song for the first time, you think it's the greatest song ever just because he swears like every swear word in a row.
No question. I mean, it was like it's like that Blink 182 song. If you're 13 and you hear piss shit, fuck, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I was taken aback for sure, but it was more solid than I thought. Being my age, I wouldn't have thought that that I liked it as much as I did. A lot of weird quarantine listens,
Yeah. Yeah, quarantine. You're just like, yeah, I'll check out the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Sure. How is Mother's Milk? Is it really good?
I will stand by this. One Hot Minute rules.
That's the one with the airplane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember checking that out from the library.
Yes. Ripping a copy of that one. Dylan, what's your go-to on this list? If you had just one jump at you.
Oh man. We were looking at this chart earlier and you said what a chaotic year for punk. It is so all over the place. I went back a page here. I'm gonna say if I had to pick something, I'd go Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest by Zao.
Oh, nice. It's the absolute classic.
First new lineup, Zao record. Only the one returning member from the original lineup, new vocalist, new guitars, really totally different direction for the band, and it's a killer record that truly stands the test of time.
Couldn't agree more.
That's one I could chew on. I could go song by song on that one.
Yeah. Very easily. We have covered 98 in the past before, and previously we discussed Radon's 28. We did that alongside of Discount's Love Billy, which was their Billy Bragg covers EP. We did that with good friend Corey. And then we did the Non-Compos Mentis album, Smile When You Hate. We did that with Bedtime Magic. And then we did Ink and Dagger, The Fine Art of Original Sin. We did that with Open City, which that was a really fun episode. And where Dr. Dan Yemen had to whisper talk on a podcast. And then we did Dillinger Forrest's Midwestern Songs of the America with our Madball mystery caller as well. Dylan, Madball discourse on Twitter this week.
Well, it'll never go away. I love that we're just like gonna constantly see Madball talk. It's a band that I never thought about at all until we started doing this show. Now I see them all the time. What a weird discourse. Like,
yeah,
you don't like this band?
If you don't like this band, you're not hardcore. That was the argument I saw.
that is like has been considered problematic forever. And has also like doubled down on the anti-vax shit recently.
Here's my thing. And it's funny because I still managed to hear about it, despite not having gone on Twitter in a long time. Sometimes you can just think stuff. Like that's its own activity too. Like I don't know. It's so funny to me. Like none of this discourse was happening back in, the 90s. It was not my thing in the 90s. And I probably misunderstood it in a way that, I never came to understand it. I was just interested in other things. But man, why would anyone expect a 20-year-old to like Madball as their entry point? Like, let's just keep it moving, man.
A 20-year-old whose like current band is like an indie emo kind of like project too. Yeah. It's just like, I don't think this is their lane.
No.
And sometimes it's just a funny observation. That person's follow-up was, oh no, all the worst people I thought would see this saw it.
Yeah. Who was it intended for?
Though my favorite comment was somebody just called them midball.
Midball. All right, here's the definition of old man asking a question. I'm about to sound real old. What does ratioed mean?
That's like a Twitter thing.
Yeah.
It's when, what is it? You have more comments and retweets than you do likes. I think that's what that means.
It's when a reply to your tweet has more likes than the initial tweet. That's like the definitive version of it. But I think people can broadly consider it being ratioed if you're getting more quote tweets and replies than likes.
Okay. But yeah, you can edit this out to make me look a lot cooler, but you should keep it in. I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna write down the definition with a pencil in my composition notebook.
I think Dylan had to explain it to me one time too, because I was like, "What does this mean?"
It's so funny. I'll be reading a thread and someone will be like, "Boom, ratioed," and I'll just be like, "All right,
sure did."
Yeah, you sure did ratio that person.
You got him. Got him.
Got him.
Oh man, 1998 is wild year.
It's a year. There's some amazing records, and some records that never did it for me. That are wildly loved.
Yeah, so. Beloved albums. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your hot water choice? What's the one that people would ratio you on Twitter for?
If I was on Twitter and said this, I would be hammered. And by no means do I dislike this album. In fact, I own this album, but I never understood this changed the face of music. The Shape of Punk to Come.
Yeah.
I think is a pretty good album. It's a fun listen. I think it's more that the after the fact, like it literally, you have that album cover, you have that title, it's going to be cerebral, it's going to demand a lot from you and say a lot without having to say anything. It's, man, people talk about it like it's the Bible, and it never did that for me.
Yeah, that's my choice too. It's like, it's fine. It's really fine.
Yeah, good album, man. It didn't change the landscape. Maybe it did. I don't know. But
I've ruined my credibility on the internet just by talking about how much I love The Offspring enough that no one will really care if I were to be like, you know what? I don't like lungfish,
Dude, I defend the Green Day trilogy, so don't listen to anything I say.
That's right. Uno, Dos, and Trey.
Solid. You have one classic album if you stitch them together.
That's always like a great idea. Let's make a double, triple album.
Gosh.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Let's rethink this.
Maybe another dubious recommendation I could come with is Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo by MXPX is really good record.
Oh.
I always wanted to like them for this record in particular.
Yeah. Is it just because you'd heard this one, or you
No, I just like the cover and the title.
Yeah, it's a good title. I think the title comes from like hate mail that they got.
Yeah.
I think the drummer said it was like, man, you guys are slowly going the way of the buffalo. Like, just, talking about how they aren't as good as they used to be.
Weren't they like in their early 20s when this album came out?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they were like 15 when the first album came out or something like that. Or maybe they were still like 18. But still, that was 94, and then Buffalo was 98. So, they're still probably under 25.
So hyper-specific weird question here for you with that MXPX album. Is Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo as mature as it looks on the cover? Or is it still just, what they did before?
I would not describe it as mature. It has a song, and it's one of my favorites from the record, called Party, My House, Be There. So
it's actually a good
not
title.
Mature, but because it is truly just like, hey, you should come to a party. Think you're cute. Like, that is the absolute depth of meaning. There's probably some more songs on here with a little more meaning to them, but
it's kind of considered it's weird because like people are like, Life in General is the best record, and it's probably the best record in the general vibe and feel of an MXPX record, but I think slowly gets credited as like it's their best as far as just like musicianship and songwriting. I think that's how people feel that one is.
Yeah, I think it's a well-built record. They really had figured out what they were doing by that point.
Cool. They got Greg Heston to play guitar on one song on there, so that's something.
Did they?
Yeah.
Huh.
Which they would have been on probably still A&M at this point, I think. Which they would. Oh, but they did the EP on Fat Wreck around this time too. No, maybe that was a little later. I don't know. MXPX is a band who I wouldn't really recommend anyone like go out of their way to listen to, but if you've heard all the pop punk bands from the 90s, you could try them.
Yeah, or go back and listen to the pop punk bracket that we did. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Classic.
Yeah, we certainly didn't get yelled at by everyone saying that's not a pop punk band.
I know. Gosh. Yeah, but on Rate Your Music, we got to at least touch on this. Justin, Dylan and I were talking about this. It happens to have 3 of my favorite punk albums of all time. Adore by the Smashing Pumpkins. Without You, I'm Nothing by Placebo. And Whatever in the World, what was it called again? It's a Spoon album. A series of sneaks. Like, it's a wild list.
Yeah, that's this website going. We do use the tag. What do you call it? The influence as well. But I think the gothic rock is the reason why you get Smashing Pumpkins on there, because it's considered a subgenre of post-punk.
Okay.
By the way, I like Adore.
I love this. I love the Smashing Pumpkins, and this is my favorite era, to be honest.
I really enjoy this album. It's different, but it's fun.
It's great, yeah.
I guess someone tagged Placebo post-hardcore as the subgenre, so I don't know about that one there. But what's Spoon's connection? Do they have the? They
have a post-punk revival tag on.
Oh yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, I'm sure it's not really. That's also, people vote on genres on this website, so it's like
it's wild.
Okay, Riot Stairs. They're a hardcore band, right?
Yeah.
This website, they don't think it's a hardcore record. I keep voting on it to be a hardcore record, and they're like, no, it's a metalcore record. I'm like,
what? It sounds like Orange 9mm more than it does. I don't know.
And then they also were like alternative metalcore record is what they're calling it, and I'm like,
all right,
whatever.
I would call it a post-hardcore record more than I would call it a metalcore record.
Yes.
I can see where the metalcore thing comes from, though, and there's enough riffing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And breakdowns. I get it.
Fun record, man.
I tried to call it a groove metal record because it has a lot of that like groove to it, and that got voted down. But well, I think we've played around on the charts long enough because the album we're talking about is very long. So we should probably get over to that.
It is. That's right. It is.
So we assigned you the year 1998, and you selected Life Won't Wait by Rancid.
Listen to the record. Do you feel the same? It don't get any better. Going backwards again. Sweat your fist, wet stitches in the face. Fuckers like me, I just sorted out with grace. Never been like them within society. Life protects me, feeling the banality. Now my guns are blazing. Bloodclot, I can see 360. And now my guns are blazing. Picking back up and starting all over again. Hey! Oh! Hey! Well, I'm a bad motherfucker. Driving me insane. So
I
don't
sure
you even
did.
bother.
And I've got a couple stats on the album. So Rancid formed out of the ashes of the legendary ska punk band Operation Ivy. They were formed in Berkeley, California in 1991 by Tim Armstrong and Matt Freeman. They were part of the punk rock boom of the mid-90s with the explosion of Green Day and The Offspring. It's a rising tide raises all ships type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
After releasing their self-titled album in 1993, they added Lars Fredriksson to the band. And then they released Let's Go in 1994 and Out Come the Wolves in 1995. So Life Won't Wait was released June 30th, 1998 on Epitaph Records. This is the band's fourth full-length album, and the personnel is Tim Armstrong on guitar and vocals, Lars Fredriksson, guitar and vocals, Matt Freeman on bass, and Brett Reed on drums. And the album was produced by Lars and Tim, and this is also the first album to not have Brett Gurwitz involved in the production whatsoever. So I've got more stats on like kind of the recording, but we'll get to that later. But first things first, what made you choose this album, Adam?
I mean, full disclosure, huge Rancid fan, and this is without question my favorite Rancid album. I always like I like the bands that go for the overly ambitious, even if they don't always hit the mark. And I think there's a bit of both here. And I always like that Rancid got tagged with the Clash ripoffs far before they actually did it, which I think is what they did here to a large extent. But I like the idea that it's a band coming off what's considered one of the best punk records of the modern era, if not ever. What do you do? And they'd been touring the world for years. And I think you can hear it in the album. Global concerns and a more world influenced sound. So I bought this on CD too. So, I'll forever be attached to the ones you wait for,
Dylan, give us your Rancid history there.
I've always been tangential to Rancid. I've always been like well aware of them, enjoyed a lot of songs, but never really dove on any records. I have probably, I want to say I have heard And Out Come the Wolves in its entirety, but probably a really long time ago. Never a band that I've really spent a significant amount of time on, but have still absorbed a lot of knowledge about them just because of how much they're talked about, and how influential they are, how they draw lines from classic to modern era in punk, and how important they are for that. But yeah, not a band that I have ever had any like real personal investment in. I don't have a Rancid hot take. Like, I'm not going to say what record is their best because I truly don't know. I would say the one that everyone says is their best just because I'm like, I'll defer to what everyone else thinks. I'm not going for, they were the best. The first record was their best. Like, not many people would do that. I don't think, but there's somebody out there. But
yes, similar to the point. Okay, I think I'm a little more invested in Rancid than you were, Dylan. I never like owned any of their albums, but I definitely had a couple of them like downloaded during the music downloading days, and definitely listened to And Out Come the Wolves a bunch, and I've probably heard a couple of the others a few times, like the first two, and maybe even Indestructible. I couldn't remember if I'd ever listened to this album before. I may have, or I may not have. I may have started it but didn't finish it just because it's a 64-minute album or something like that.
Yeah.
So I knew songs off this album. They had a couple that were pretty big singles for them, and they made videos for it and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been appreciative of Rancid. I've never been a hater, of course, nothing like that. I've always kind of like made fun of Tim Armstrong because he's like a cartoon of a human being, but I think everyone kind of does the same kind of thing. It's like the way that a lot of people make fun of him. It's almost in a loving way, really. But
yeah, it's a knowing wink of
I see video of Tim Armstrong and I'm like, this is so goofy, but really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's
just is.
When you see him, you're like, I know on paper, like I can take this apart and be like, the fashion hat and the guitar that he can't possibly be playing, and the tattoos. Like it's just, there's so much rife for comedy. But if I was 12, that would inspire me. Like I would be like, I want to be that.
Yeah.
So like I feel like if you can embrace that inner like teenager who's impressed by that, you can be like, all right, that's cool. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, no question.
I've always thought of them as kind of like an entry level punk band, and it's not to say that they're like easy or like childish. Really, it's just more of a like they were so ubiquitous and so just such a big part of punk music in the 90s that I think you're just going to run across them when you're first getting into punk music. You're going to run into them.
Yeah,
it's like you're going to run into Bad Religion. You're going to run into, No
Green
Effects,
Day.
Stuff like, Green Day, exactly. You're going to run into them just because you Google punk and they're probably one of the first 5 results that show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
think of them kind of as I kind of do think of them as a metalheads punk band, and not because of like technicality or even like hardness of their sound, but that they're a punk band that guys who primarily listen to metal reach for. And maybe that's just like personal experience of being like knowing, people who are like super, super into metal or like mostly listen to like really heavy stuff. And they're like, they had a Rancid phase when they were a teenager and they still love Rancid.
Yeah. But I think, you bring up a good point, Justin. I think the approachability and the accessibility of a band like Rancid, in my opinion, just ultimately comes down to Tim Armstrong's talent as a songwriter. Someone that has written for Pink. He wrote the majority of Pink's biggest album. I mean, he knows how to write a chorus.
Yeah.
As we saw in And Out Come the Wolves with some of their massive hits.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes this next album so interesting. Were they attempting to capitalize on the popularity, or were they retreating from it?
Yeah, so they had been touring for, I think it said 2 years straight leading up to this record. So, And Out Come the Wolves was a massive hit. It was like they were being chased by major labels to sign, and, Green Day and Offspring got really big. So obviously, like, the labels are like, we need another one. We need another band like that. And so they were reached out for, because they had like success off of the previous album, just like minor like airplay success, which is always fun whenever it's an independent label band getting like any kind of airplay. So they chose to stick with Epitaph instead of signing with any major labels. And I think that came from maybe the punk ethos that they prescribed to, like I never got the feeling that they were a band who, I don't think they ever sold out, for lack of a better term. They never compromised their values. They seem to always kind of just be who they are for pretty much the beginning. That probably comes from their root
you'd imagine it does come from the roots of what the band was, or and continues to be, I think. But you see a lot of their albums as being reactionary to the one before. I don't know if you said you had some exposure to this, Dylan, but and Out Come the Wolves, I think, is a really well done, still pretty long record, 22, 23 some odd songs, but it feels a little more two-dimensional. And they just, you feel like there's a spreadsheet on the wall somewhere for the writing sessions of Life Won't Wait,
Yeah. I think, and maybe it's a Clash influence too, of like that prolificness. Cause you look at Clash doing a double album and then a triple album and just being like constantly really almost like I feel like they have a philosophy, and this is something that I really appreciate. And it's something that I think is kind of in line with my thinking creatively in writing, is if there's an idea, it's worth doing. And there's, a lot of bands, a lot of songwriters, think of I need to write 10 songs to get 8. I need to write extra material and then choose from the best. And from a commercial perspective of you want to keep a record under 45 minutes, that's definitely something that you would do. But then those songs get orphaned and you just throw them away. And I'm like, but they were good enough, right? They were good enough for you to finish them.
Yeah.
And get to the point of maybe even recording them or demoing them and then deciding to move on from them. I feel like there are bands like Rancid, bands like The Clash, bands like Yo La Tengo, even where they're just no, this is an idea. We're going to explore it. We're going to flesh it out. We're going to make a whole song out of this, and we're going to release it. We're not going to sit on it and hide it and be like, oh, it's not good enough. There was an idea and you explored it. And I think that's valid. I feel like that's Minutemen kind of, being
that's a great
example
comparison
of that.
Yeah. And I think that, the scope of this record, whether or not it was a reaction to And Out Come the Wolves, they were shooting for something. And then the follow-up is their leanest, nastiest sounding punk record. There are elements of hardcore on the next record. It's their shortest record. There are still a ton of songs, but the smallest number of songs they've had on an album. I doubt they've ever done an album. I would love to look. I think 16 is probably that's a slim album for these boys. So
I think I heard good friend Corey was a big Rancid fan, especially the 90s stuff. And I think he said their shortest album's still 34 minutes long, or maybe 30.
That's the one that came after this. Yeah.
The common refrain that I kept seeing about this album over and over and over and over again, this is their Sandinista, which was the massive triple LP Clash record where they experimented with lots of reggae and ska and dub and stuff like that. So, and I'd agree to a point. I think it's just more their London calling.
Yes, 110%.
Yeah.
The difference between this record and Sandinista, which I think Sandinista is a good, interesting record to listen to, is that this is nowhere near a process record.
Yes.
There's not songs on here that are at some stage of incompletion,
Yeah.
which I think is something that would very much describe Sandinista as being like, these are experiments, these are things that we didn't really finish, but we're including them because the process is part of it.
Yeah.
This is a finished record. All of these songs are done.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can add to them.
These are all songs. They're not sketches, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Love them or hate them. I mean, they are. They're completed, and I would venture to guess this took longer than any other record they've ever done. I have no way of knowing that, but you would just imagine the amount of guest spots and additional musicians that went into this album. It was probably a studio nightmare.
So I do actually have a little bit of information on that. I think it took them a year to record.
Damn.
It was recorded in multiple different cities and studios. San Francisco, LA, New York, New Orleans, and in Kingston, Jamaica.
Yeah.
Like, this was recorded all over the place. And I think that's how you get this murderer's row of guest appearances on this album.
Truly.
And you're right, though, that saying it's not a process album, because the thing I read also said that they had written 50 songs.
Yeah, I saw that too.
for this album. In the year they were writing, they wrote 50 songs, and a lot of it wound up being on like compilations and like singles and stuff like that. But
yeah,
just the idea, and I think that's why it's so long. I think they were just like, no, out of all those songs we wrote, these are the best ones.
Yeah.
And like I don't listen to any of these songs and go like, I think they're all here just because they had so many to choose from. Like, I think that's fully what the reason was, because there's nothing on here that I'm like, ugh, I don't know why they included that, you know?
Yeah.
There may be some redundancy in some of the songs that may be like, yeah, did you need that one too? You know, but nothing that I'm just like, it's absurd that they included this.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no goofy songs. There's no joke songs. There's short stuff that verges on being like, was that a sketch? But the production and the way they're performed are so thorough. Yeah, I kept thinking too while I was listening to the record. I'm like, going into it, I'm like, this is so many songs. I know it's 64 minutes. Like, I had seen the runtime, and I was like, I was kind of like almost just like had the foot ready to put it down. You know, to just be like,
oh yeah,
I'm gonna catch the one they shouldn't have put on there. It's like, I was looking for it because I'm just like, this has got to be one of those records where there's a bunch of songs, 2 or 3 songs where they just didn't need them. You know, there's got to be some filler material. And I kept like some of the songs, and I can't even remember which one specifically. Like, the weakest songs on here don't stand out to me as being that weak. Like, looking back at the track listing, I'm like, I know there were songs that when they started, I was like, maybe this is the one. And it's probably in the most superfluous material of like the most similar sounding songs.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, I'm like, I'm singing along to it. I'm just like, and I'm nodding to the groove. Like, I found that piece of it that I locked into, and I'm like, I see why this was a keeper.
Yeah, I'd say maybe you might get to like the end of the album and maybe it'll be like, did we need that one? But like, I don't know.
Are there, Adam, any songs for you that are skippable? I know this is one that you're personally much more invested with and have spent more time with, so maybe they've revealed themselves to you where you're just like, I could lose that one.
Yeah, I think for whatever reason, and it's probably my favorite one to sing along to, but I'm not very partial to Who Would Have Thought.
Okay.
Sort of almost you get like a really marble-mouthed balladeer vibe. Who would have thought? Dreams come true. You know, it's very, it's overwrought, but it's in a way that, like you said before, it shouldn't work. It's kind of silly. It's very easy to mimic, but it's still cool. Like that sort of that thing that I never really liked about Tom Waits. Kind of works, the punk rock analog to Tom Waits is most certainly Tim Armstrong, and it works for whatever reason, but that's not something I need to hear again necessarily. And I'm ashamed to say, I feel like it should be a cutter, but Crane Fist, the one that kind of sounds like ICP playing in a ska saloon, if that makes sense. But it works, and it's fun, and it's catchy, and it's over the top. But because they were in a place where, like you said, every idea we're running with, and we're recording and ultimately putting on the album. I love it.
It's funny that you name two songs, Crane Fist and Who Would Have Thought, as being like cuttable, like expendable songs that are both so essential to the record that they were selected as singles and made music videos for them. So where does Bloodclot land for you? That's the other big single song on here.
I absolutely love Bloodclot. I mean, this is like instant classic Rancid formula, and you got my other favorite, Billy Joe Armstrong, dropping "Hey Ho" in the backing vocals. It's just great. I mean, and again, this is Tim Armstrong's songwriting on display. It's so damn catchy. This could be your first punk song. You'd be like, this is the greatest music ever. It's just instant. Did it hit you, or did it?
That's one that I knew from this record prior. Like, it's one of the songs, and I've maybe heard. I really couldn't single out any other songs from this record though that I had heard. But I definitely knew Bloodclot. I was like, and it's I mean, it's so textbook. Like, it's just, you could teach. Yeah, like it could be someone's first punk song. It's like you can teach someone, the genre history of punk up to that point on almost just that song.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like if AI wrote a punk song, And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, because it just rules, and it comes right out of the gate. One thing so I don't forget it, and I would want to get your take on this too, which is so funny, especially considering the song that comes right after it. But there's this, like minute or whatever long, rollicking, crazy punk intro, and it ends with the phenomena you are about to witness could very well revolutionize your way of thinking. And then they come right back with a Rancid song that could have been on any of the preceding albums, Like, they could have gone like, all right, we're hitting you with something weird as shit right away. You kind of forget that intro by the time something semi-revolutionary actually comes along.
Forget everything you knew about Rancid.
Yeah. And then remember it all right away. But yeah, that's one that I love. You I thought would be even more interested in this, and I'd imagine you may have come across this piece of information that I never put together, but another one of my favorite albums from a favorite artist. This cover is an homage to Neil Young After the Gold Rush.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't make that connection, but yeah.
Nor did I. And then looking at it now, you're like, oh yeah, holy shit, that's certainly that album cover. But that's probably my favorite by Neil, and that was a neat connection. I thought I would never have guessed you'd hear After the Gold Rush playing in the Rancid van, but we'd probably be surprised by a lot, right?
I guess, yeah. I mean, they seem to be the kind of people that would have eclectic tastes.
Yeah.
I mean, just like as evidenced by like what they chose to do on this record is going in so hard into ska, and then like you said, like the Tom Waits thing too. Like, there is a very, and this makes sense, I guess, but there's like a very like Costello, Tom Waits kind of like bluesman, lounge singer, pop rock thing happening on a lot of songs too.
Like piano tinged drug ballads, you know what I mean? Like, there's a one Hoover Street, which just feels like this is something that Rancid never would have attempted, even 3 short years prior with An Out Come the Wolves. And I just love that they're willing to go there and actually nail it. Is the biggest surprise.
That dreams come true, and who would have thought I ended up with you? And who would have thought what they said was true, but it wasn't. You walked blinding darkness come through. Silhouette palm trees backing up against the sky. Echo park sunset and endless drives by. Well, someone went down and I wonder who. Faces starts to fall, could be anybody I know. So I drank like a fish and I quack like a rat. But a city of shit, I ended up on my back. Well, I can't believe you're with me after dark. So let it come together in Echo Park. And I said, who would have thought the dreams come true? And who would have thought I ended up with you? And who would have thought what they said was true? But it wasn't you all, not a darkness coming through. A red flag, and you're biting with.
Do you have a cutter that just, or one that you wish did remain on the cutting room floor if you were forced to pick?
I can't name it by name. I think if I listened through the record again, I could probably pinpoint the songs, and it's really only just like something that's not as memorable. It's not like I think the idea is bad. I think it's just that it's redundant, and it's like a less memorable version of a song that exists on the record.
Yeah.
There's one song on there that I really don't like.
Let's hear it.
I really did not like Crane Fist.
Hey, that's what I just brought up.
Oh, really?
I said it sounded like ICP playing in a ska saloon.
It was the one I was like, this is where the transplants came from, this song.
Oh, wow. I never even thought of that, but that's true. It's still catchy. But
and I get why they did it. And I get like it's unique. It's probably one of the most unique tracks on the record. Mm-hmm. They're doing something completely different on that song than they're doing on a lot of the others. So I get why it's there. So I guess ideally you wouldn't want to cut it, but
yeah, I didn't dislike that song. I actually kind of expected this record to sound more like the Transplants. So hearing it was like, oh, there it is.
I thought 1998 was also kind of Transplants-y.
Yeah.
That's on the back half. And there are a lot of ska songs on here, like kind of traditional ska songs. Maybe too many, but none that I'm like, oh no, this shouldn't be here, you know? Because we also know that Tim Armstrong is a huge ska fan because Hellcat put out tons of like ska records, and he produced the Jimmy Cliff's 2012 album. You know, like he's a ska guy.
98, is this still peak mainstream ska?
Is it pre mainstream ska?
Well, the Boss Tones record came out in 97. Let's face it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we do have to face it.
Yeah. We're in 98, so we're at peak swing revival.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's true. And speaking of Boss Tones, that's one part I would cut from the album. It's only one line. I can't do Dickie Barrett, man.
On Cash Culture and Violence.
Cash Culture and Violence. Yeah. It's maybe one of the most fun lines to sing. But no, man, neither then nor in 2023.
It is so funny how he pops in for that line. I'm like, oh, hey,
Dickie.
And you think he's going to get a verse, and then he doesn't come back.
Yeah. They're like, and cut. That's enough.
Perfect. We got it from here.
Yeah. We need a guy who smokes one more pack a day than Tim Armstrong.
So the record starts off with the intro track. It's kind of like these harmonicas and guitars going crazy, and then like a sample going over it. But then the first actual full song on the record is Bloodclot. And we may have talked about this on the 90s bracket that we did, punk bracket we did, when we talked about Rancid. But this is the first, I'm fairly certain the Bloodclot is the first Rancid song I ever heard, because it was featured in the PC game ESPN X Games Pro Border, and it had an entire punk soundtrack. It's like Rancid, Pennywise, Voodoo Glow Skulls, like it's a like pre Tony Hawk like all punk soundtrack, which was very funny to me. And Bloodclot is like not really representative of a majority of Rancid's discography, because it's like a large song, it's hard, it's fast, and like, but it's still like one of that's a 5-star song for me. Like that's the song on here I gave the highest rating out of everything. And one other thing I noticed too is when I was looking at the Rate Your Music page for this album, there are like individual track ratings for each song.
Wow. All right.
And then so when I was going through the record and like looking at what people were rating those songs whenever I got to them, the ones that people were like 3.1, 3.2 over were the ones where I was like, those are my favorite songs on the album. Those are like my 4-star, my 4.25s. Let me pull them up specifically because.
Yeah, I'll see if they match any of mine, because I tend to have like all the wrong songs are my favorites.
Yeah. So, okay. Far as they didn't really like New Dress that much. I like New Dress a lot because it's got
I love
like,
that song.
Yeah,
it's got the oh yes all on the. I love that one. Which it felt the verse felt kind of like a Outcome the Wolf style song. They didn't. Let's see. They didn't like Backslide as much, and I really like that one too because it's got another fun. It's got the I chorus to it, and it has like a soul kind of bridge to it. Oh, people didn't like Cocktails. I love that one. That's the harmonica one.
Yeah.
And then the Wolf doesn't have as high a score as I thought it would, but I loved the Wolf too. Like, which I noticed that the riffs on that one sound like the Time Warp at the very, very beginning. The build up to the Time Warp.
I'm gonna have to listen to that back.
It's astounding. Time is fleeting.
I didn't trust it. They smiled at me first.
The Wolf was one of the few songs that I was like, when it started, I thought, here's the one I'd cut. This is gonna be the filler. And by the end of it, I'm like, no, I like it. It's good. This is good. This is a good song. It should stay. Yeah, it's funny. Cocktails, Backslide. Yeah, all of those songs. I was trying to remember. This was a record that I looked at my phone to be like, whoa, what song is this? Several times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what most of those songs were that I was like, I need to remember that that's the song that I liked, because I ended up doing that so many times. Just a really shockingly consistent, long record.
Yeah, very much. One of my favorites that I feel like didn't get much discourse, at least when I was looking around. Well, two actually, but love them. Lady Liberty and Leicester Square, I just think are top tier, incredible Rancid songs. I tend to be more of a Lars guy, just in general. And I don't, I tend not to even look at songwriting credits necessarily, but in looking at those, they were both the two of them, Armstrong and Fredrickson. And I never know how that quote unquote work is split. Who writes what? There's something about Lars's voice, particularly on this album, that just sounds so charged, but also world weary. He seems more of a global citizen more than ever before, which I just love. They sound tired but creative in a way that I'm probably putting that in a very poor way, but that's how it feels.
That Lady Liberty song, it's the one I was actually going to say something about that song earlier when I got cut off. That's the one that kind of has like the rockabilly feel to it. Like the click bass to it.
Yep.
Which now we know too, like Hellcat like had a ton of rockabilly bands too. Psychobilly and stuff like that. And Dylan told me that you said you would have cut Who Would Have Thought, and I thought that song rules.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't think I would actually cut any of the songs because they're so important to the the pastiche, as it were. But like, it's mostly because that's when Tim leans into that, like, are we really singing like this?
So I'm glad you said that, because there's a video for this song and it's on YouTube, and I don't know if it's a sync problem as far as like the music and the video aren't matching up, just whoever uploaded it, maybe a low bit rate or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if he was that bad at lip syncing on the stage, because it looks like one of those bad lip reading YouTube series. And because it's his voice, it sounds like someone doing a voice on top of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't match up his mouth movements. There's another song on here where I'm like, I actually wrote the note. I said, what is Tim saying? And it's Warsaw.
You only wrote that once?
There's in Warsaw. There's like a bridge or something where it's just him kind of just going like blah 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 blah, blah over like a bass line. That was the one I was just like, woof, that's what is this?
And it's silly and hilarious, but there's something about it that just works. Like, if I said this before in our pop punk bracketology, I apologize, but it's worth repeating. On the next, or no, I guess it was on Indestructible, there is a song, and Tim is singing, and the words are her blue mohawk hair. He's describing a woman. Mm-hmm. And he says, her blue mohawk hair. He's like, how did it ever get this far? How did we ever get this band to this point? And I think he was like, fuck it. How funny is this that I'm doing this? I think he's smart enough to know exactly what he's doing, right?
How much of it is a bit and how much of it is like, or just he's like, no, I'm going to say it like this just because he can't talk like that in real life. I mean, I feel like I've seen him talking before and he's not nearly as mush mouth.
Well, he's not, he's not slurring.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to, he definitely has a gruff voice, but yeah, he's not like, I'm not,
like relax the lower lip as he's talking.
It's a very interesting, even speaking voice. I've seen a number of documentaries. He did the ska documentary. Did you watch that?
No, I didn't watch that one.
I can't remember what it was called. Pick It Up, maybe it was. He did the narration for that. He did the East Bay punk documentary about Lookout and Gilman. And it's really, really well done. And he's fairly eloquent when he wants to be.
Yeah.
So I think there's a good portion of it is a bit. But the bit has become the identity, and I think it's authentic in that, like, this is how I do it. This is what comes out, maybe not naturally, but it was already sort of, I wouldn't say fully formed, but when you hear him in those moments when he would sing in Op Ivy.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's a change of a voice.
Where is he from? Is he from California?
I feel like he's from the East Bay. Do you know anything about this, Dylan?
Personal. Let's see if we can.
He was.
We're not looking this up. We're just brainstorming to remember.
Born in Albany, California, which is Bay Area.
Yeah, so he's like a California guy, but he talks almost like a New York crossed with an English guy.
Interesting. Yes.
I mean, maybe that just comes from like maybe he was super into like Roger Mirit's on here, so maybe he's like just super into like Agnostic Front and the Clash, so he's just like, I'm gonna be both of them.
And let's think about this. He has some interesting connections both then and now. I mean, I know he co-wrote a couple songs on the aforementioned Madballs one of their latter albums, and then he did a song with that hardcore band Section Hate. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, coast to coast, he hangs with some heavies, so to speak, But it's a really, really interesting mix. You're right. I hadn't thought about that. New York and England.
Yeah.
He has the whole presentation, like the hat and like the whole like the hardness of being on the streets kind of lyrics. He has that like Goodfellas kind of like wants to be a gangster. Like,
yeah.
Does he have dice tattoos on him anywhere?
I'm sure he's got some dice somewhere.
We know there's a spider web all over that cranium.
He's gotta have some dice.
Some flames, of course.
I mean, I want dice tattoos. Come on. Tim Armstrong, he's got it.
I wanted to mention like the guests on this record because it is just bonkers how many people are on this record. And now I fully believe that that's based off of, they spend a year recording it in like 5 different locations around the world. So you're naturally going to have time to bring people in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to look at some of the guests on here because to pull it up specifically on Discogs because it gives you like everyone on each track. So we mentioned Bloodclot. It has guest vocals by like the D Generation guys. Howie Pyro's on here. We have Billy Joe, of course, is on here. Marky Ramone is on that song too, which maybe is the most like Ramonesy song on the album, with the Haze and the Hose, but also like Timothy Shaw of Ensign is on here on that song. We have Eric Stefani, which is Gwen Stefani's brother, Japanese American pop star. And then like the Hepcat guys are on here too, like a bunch of times. Is it Alex? Yeah, Alex Desire. I don't know how to pronounce the name. He's got an accent. Desire. There he is. He was in Hepcat. He's in there. We've got Vic Ruggiero. We got Jamaican star Buju Banton. Mm-hmm. We have 3 of the Specials on the song Hooligans.
Yeah. Do we have the singer of the Specials?
Yeah, we have the guitar player and the singer, and then I'm not sure what Linval Golden does, but he's a guitarist. So
that's
like
wild.
yeah, 3 of the Specials are on Hooligans, that song. And like it just keeps going, dude. There's Dickie Barrett, of course. Roger Miritz on Something in the World Today. Unmistakable. There's who is this guy? DJ Q-Max. He's from the Slackers. So a lot of Slackers on here too.
Oh, okay. Most bizarrely, let's not forget, Justin. Is it Stephen or Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction on steel drums?
Right, on Coppers, which also features Dr. Israel, who's another
so weird
Jamaican artist. Yeah, I saw that. Steve Perkins, Jane's Addiction, Porno for Pyros. There's another Porno for Pyros member on here too.
Really?
Yeah. Is it Simon? No, I don't know that guy.
What? Funny one. Let's just pretend it was a different one. Will Wheaton on backing vocals.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's too many L's in Will. That's a bummer.
Yeah, I did not know that guy's name was Will Wheaton too. Like,
no, me neither.
He was a background vocalist for Coolio, Michael Jackson, Montel Jordan, Shaka Khan, and he's written songs for Earth, Wind, and Fire. So like he's like been around.
The most shocking thing you just said in that statement was that Coolio had backing vocals. And Eric Stefani, is that?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I guess you were switching out your earbuds.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Eric Stefani, Japanese American star. Did you guys see the Gwen Stefani said she's Japanese, even though she's not Japanese?
Yeah.
She did. She'll
never stop.
Because they were questioning her about the stuff that she did a while back.
The appropriation, yeah.
Yeah. And then she's like, I'm Japanese. And then they're like, wait, what? And she's like, no, she's not Japanese. We know she's not. She's an Italian American.
You're like 55 years old. Just say, yeah, it was stupid. I've moved on and I've learned, you know. You can't cancel Gwen Stefani, so like just own up to it.
Yeah. Which I think saying you're Japanese is actually way worse than, just being like, oh yeah, I was wrong back then.
Infinitely worse.
She's always been like, people are like, oh, I kind of gave her a pass for like the Indian stuff because it's like there were like Indian people in the band and she was in a relationship. And, she's like, almost family at that point. And it's just.
You can pass that off if she was embracing his culture because she was in a relationship with him. But yeah.
in the same way that she became a redneck when she was married to Blake Shelton.
That's right.
It's like, I'm from Kentucky. No, you're not.
We have documented proof of where you're from.
I've always loved fishing. And I don't think Blake Shelton even really fishes.
Doubt it.
I'll oppose.
But yeah, it's just like it's just a ton of people on this record. So
it's wild.
It's amazing. I was looking too at just kind of like it did well. It peaked at number 35 on the Billboard 200. Wolves was more successful, but this was still a successful record. And then of course they go on to do 5 more records. The Self-Titled in 2000, Indestructible in 03, Let the Dominoes Fall in 09, and Honor Is What We Know in 2014, and Troublemaker in 2017. So they are still an active band. And as of 2021, they were talking about they are finishing up a record, a new record. Yeah. So we'll probably get a new Rancid within the year. Our good friend Corey actually asked me, though. He said, so if Rancid were the Clash of the 90s, who's the Rancid of today?
Oof.
And like, I was really thinking about it, and I was like, I have no idea. His best pick was, he said Dead to Me, but like, Rancid are more active than Dead to Me are at this point. Like, there's been a new Rancid record before there's been a more recently than a Dead to Me record.
Dead to Me is approaching Chinese democracy, to be honest. I just hope everyone's fine.
Yeah.
That's all I hope in that camp.
Yeah, they said that record's done. I don't know if they meant they were done writing it. Maybe they hadn't recorded it yet, but
yeah. Years ago, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a stretch, but to answer that question, and it's something that was made more apparent to me in listening to this record in how Rancid was influential to this band. Because it's always been one of those things where like I knew it on paper, but hadn't really connected the dots. I would say that for a while, the Gaslight Anthem was the Rancid.
That's who I thought of too. I was like, it's the closest. It's not the exact same thing that they're doing, but it is the most cartoony, caricature-y.
Of like fully embracing like a really like corny retro aesthetic, and just being like, and also coming really like right off of the Clash family tree, branching off of that. But
influence. Being undeniable and having the songs to pull it off.
Having the pop songwriting sensibilities, and having the charismatic, like, to really be able to sell it too.
Mm-hmm.
And
which
then
I
also
guess
having
you go,
like the cultural, like, that's probably one of the last few punk bands to really make it to the level that they did.
Yeah, because you can branch off Gaslight, I think, easier than you can branch off of Rancid now. Like, like, oh, Menzingers, like you throw them out there, but they feel more like branch off of the Springsteen side of things than the Clash side of things.
Yeah.
I don't know too many. I'm sure there are plenty of like small bands that nobody knows that are doing Clash stuff, but
yeah, it's definitely one of those bands. They're one of those bands that is due, a resurgence. We go through these periods where this, like you were saying before we were even recording, Dylan, where people make this like take this one band that was never even respected in their time, and all of a sudden it's it's popular for 2 months or something like that. But man, I wish people would go back and explore the Clash.
Yeah, because the Clash are always they're well regarded. I think there's definitely a lot of people who are just like, I love the Clash, one of my all-time favorite bands, but there's not as many newer people whose Clash influence is that obvious,
Yeah,
or
for sure.
or even just like a zeitgeisty people talking about the Clash in general type thing.
Maybe they've fallen into a classic rock association.
Kind of. Yeah.
A lot of people now are just not interested in, there was that tiny push with Stranger Things, using Should I Stay or Should I Go in that first season.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And that was like, you then started to hear that song you always heard that song on the radio. It never left rock radio, but you started hearing it on like playlists in stores where they might not necessarily put that kind of song, but it didn't make the creative impact. Like, I don't think that moment really inspired people to be like, oh yeah, the Clash were actually great. And maybe it's because they picked a song from like the latter days of the Clash.
Yeah.
And that's a question though. Do you think the same would have happened for the Clash if it had been Should I Stay or Should I Go in season 4 of Stranger Things, and Kate Bush was season 1? Was it a matter of the song, or was it how popular and ubiquitous Stranger Things had become?
That first season was pretty massive.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
but is that song that big of a part of that season the way that the Kate Bush song is in the new one?
That's a good point. It's just pressing play on a tape deck.
Yeah.
You never hear it again. But yeah, Kate Bush is
It gets called, from what I remember, it gets called back at one or two points in that first season.
Okay.
But I guess it's not a plot device like the Kate Bush song is. It's like one of the characters has to hear that song or something to control their powers or something. I have not watched season 4 of Stranger Things, so if I got that fact wrong, apologies to the fans of the show.
Worth your time, hot take. I will also, so like in season 17, it'll be some kid listening to Time Bomb, and then we'll have, or in this case, it'll probably be Crane Fist. That'll be like the biggest song that's slaying demons too,
Yeah, just a demon covered in tattoos from head to toe. Which I love that Tim is the one that kind of gets all of the like the jokes thrown at. But if you looked at Lars too, Lars is also as cartoonishly tattooed, and he was the Mohawk guy too,
Oh yeah. and I love the evolution and the de-evolution and the evolution of just the looks. Like there'll be an album where Lars is like, all right, I'm the Mohawk guy. I'm the charged Liberty Spikes. All right, now I'm the shaved head, boots and braces, skinhead guy. They just love, I think, every aspect of that subculture and all its offshoots. Like, I think they just live it and breathe it. It's cartoonish, but it doesn't feel that way for them because I think it's real.
Well, like apparently Lars was playing in the UK subs before he joined Rancid. Like he was asked to join Rancid. He's like, I'm already in the UK subs right now, which of course I'm sure like that's a steady gig,
Yeah.
When Rancid's beginning, but
and he has, he has like his Motorhead band with Lars Frederiksen and the Bastards. I've never explored. Yeah. And then there's what's his skinhead band? I can't think of the name of it. But they had their moment. There's just a lot of offshoots of this stuff, and they cover every base. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, they really do like everything as far as all of the influences they incorporated in their music. Like they work with artists like that. Like they they like rockabilly, psychobilly. They put out a bunch of Tiger Army records.
Yep.
Tim goes and records. Jimmy Cliff, like I said earlier. Like there is this. Is it the Old Firm Casuals? Is that who you're thinking of?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And Matt Freeman has Charger, which is another like Motorhead hardcore punk band. So.
And Tim has like a million projects too.
Too many. Yeah.
And then like. When he was with Brody for the Transplants were like really huge. He was helping with those records too. Like he's just kind of just been a little bit of everywhere. And no one's ever been like Rancid have never come across as a band who've like, oh, look at those, I don't know, out of touch guys or like politically. I don't think they're really ever on the wrong side of history,
No. And I think this album, in my opinion, is where that begins. And I think you see that with a lot of young people, especially they probably were living pretty, hand to mouth existences before Rancid broke.
Yeah.
So you see these punk kids, all of a sudden you're singing about like Gaddafi and like solidarity with coal miners. Like this isn't stuff that you would learn, hanging out in the alley next to Gilman, drinking beers, like that's on tour. And that's putting out records and appearing on records from people of every walk of life. And I always respected this album for doing that to a band that could have just stayed, 1977.
Yeah.
We like reggae too. It just really seemed like it exploded their world ideologically and politically in a way that is really cool,
There's like some heavy themes on this record too.
Very.
As far as I wanted to pull up specific like things.
And it's funny that the Clash thing comes up so much because was it Lady Liberty? There's actually a song that references the Sandinistas.
Yeah, right.
Which is
like
how perfect is that? But yeah, when you're name checking everything from the Kremlin to Afghanistan, like, this is not a punk rock coloring book. This is my ABCs of punk. It's pretty informed.
Yeah, we're not doing just like anti-flag,
No.
Gotta
die
say, for the
love
government.
anti-flag too, though. Yeah.
It's not generically anti-government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is very specifically anti-government.
Yeah.
We dropped the name before, but what's the Pennywise? Don't they literally have a song like "Fuck Authority"?
Yeah.
And in 2023, could there be any more vague a statement than "Fuck Authority"? Because which side you coming from on that, buddy? And a lot of these older punk guys, you find out that it's not from the side you thought they were singing from.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
but
a lot
Rancid
of that.
still seems to be. Yeah, there is. Dickie Barrett.
Yeah.
Talk about
right?
people on this very album.
Yeah. QAnon. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I still can't
Yeah.
believe. I also love that they broke the band up because he became QAnon. Like, I just love. I guess everybody else in the band was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? We're not doing this anymore. You can't."
And you can see the scary thing about that turn is that you can see how quickly that happens. They wrote, albeit a very, very, very terribly conceived idea, but they wrote a song about George Floyd.
Right.
It's cringy.
Yeah.
And it's should never have happened, but at least they're not approaching it from where I imagine he would now.
Yeah. How did that happen? Because that
fast.
was within the same year.
So fast.
Do you think people calling him out for it was like, well, fuck you, now I'm QAnon?
I don't know. And I won't drop names. I'll say this stuff off air. So apologies to the listeners that want to know this, but there was a band that I did a pretty big piece for. And I saw during the course of the pandemic, the singer becoming more and more radicalized to go from, what I imagine was a very leftist perspective to something that I found deeply uncomfortable and block-worthy and unfollow-worthy within the span of 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't know how grown-ass adults become QAnon incel weirdos and racists. Sorry, Dickie. Cash, culture, and violence. Little of that cash could have kept you from,
Did he lose his Jimmy Kimmel job too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that came first, and then it was the Boss Tones.
I wonder if they'd even seen him for a while too, because I bet that record it came out 2021, tail end of 2021, maybe something like that.
Yeah, right around then.
And then, because the George Floyd thing would have been in 2020.
Yeah.
So maybe they wrote that song not long after. And so then, between, all right, well, we're all going to go home. And then the record coming out, then he turned into Stop the Steal.
Yeah. Stop the Steal.
But
I will say, though, Let's Face It has some bangers on it, though.
Yeah.
I have a CD. I don't want to put money in that guy's pocket.
Right.
Pennies or not.
But it is another thing to kind of be that's cool of Rancid to not do that thing that so many people in their age group have done,
Yeah, man.
They're probably in their 50s by now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It seems to be, obviously it's not across the board, but there's this difference with the New York versus East Bay, more punk derived guys. I mean, you look at someone like Billy Joe, all of Green Day still remains pretty outspoken about pretty rad stuff. And Rancid does too, whether, I don't know if it's outwardly very much, they seem to be pretty private people, but I think if you start as a punk, you got a better shot at not being an asshole.
I mean, it probably helps that he grew up in a Bay Area, which is very liberal, and he's hanging out with Jesse from Operation Ivy, is still one of these more forward thinking liberal people in punk music today. So
the whole scene of Berkeley had to be just wildly radical, But
yeah, I can't even think of anybody else who came out of that scene who really turned the opposite direction.
No, really not.
The worst you get is maybe you don't hear what the Sam I Am guys think about stuff, but it's just because like they don't get talked about nearly as much or interviewed nearly as much, you know.
And this is based on nothing, but they're probably awesome. You know?
Right? Like I have no real reason to think anything anyway, but yeah.
You were going to bring something up, but I think for me, almost the linchpin of this entire thing is the title track. Early in the record, it's a massive song. And it has, some of this is stuff I knew at the time or, my fandom, but Buju Banton could fill a 30,000 person venue in Jamaica.
He is like, he's one of those strange, like he's absolutely massive in Jamaica, but like not really that well known here. Like just
except for he was in jail in the United States for the better part of a decade.
Okay.
I think there was a drug thing. I don't want to speak too out of school on some of it, but there's also some, some homophobia, I think, in the past. I know he's disavowed some earlier tracks, but I thought that was something worth mentioning for the amount of love I have for this song.
Okay, so I didn't know this. So it's based on the song Boom Bye Bye from 1992 when he was 19 years old.
Yes. Yeah.
And okay, so in 2007, he was among a number of reggae artists who signed a pledge called the Reggae Compassionate Act, created by the Stop Murder Music campaign to refrain from performing homophobic songs and making homophobic statements. The act stated that the signers do not encourage nor minister to hate, but rather uphold the philosophy of love, respect, and understanding towards all human beings as the cornerstone of reggae music. So, I mean, so it seems like he has been like, oh, yeah, I was 19 and stupid, which is good.
For sure.
I mean, Bad Brains have that same
Bad Brains
problem.
And I mean, very much, we mentioned the Descendants earlier. You know what I mean? Yeah. You were dumb teenagers. I'm glad I'm not a songwriter because I'm sure any song I would have written when I was 19 years old would probably not be something that I'd stand by now. Yeah. So it is cool that, he very publicly, did disavow and stop performing that stuff. But yeah, I'm glad you found that because it's worth mentioning. I just felt,
Yeah, because that is a really big song on the record. And is it the first track on here where you're like, whoa, they're going full on here?
Yes. And I think it's an incredible song.
Yeah, it's just like it's a larger than life kind of like song. It's just this like there's so many elements to that song. Yeah. Yeah. I specifically wrote the line "Division is the new world order" because that's the line that they kept shouting over that song.
It's pretty interesting too because it kind of, some of the characters, so to speak, from And Out Come the Wolves, like the Roots Radical and the Ruby Soho stuff, the guy sitting in the apartment listening to his records kind of becomes the guy on this song, it's just more, it's a fully fleshed out version of the things they were just fantasizing about on the previous album. I think that was really a platform that gave them all these opportunities. Yeah. They were like, we're using every penny we earned from the last album cycle to,
Yeah, I mean, like you go to Jamaica to record, like that's amazing.
The Rolling Stones, it's wild.
Yeah. It's what do you think the legacy of this album is? I feel like it doesn't get talked about almost ever.
Yeah, what do you think, Dylan? I mean,
I had no idea what to expect of it. And yeah, I think it's largely overlooked. I think really all of the Rancid discography is just overshadowed by And Out Come the Wolves. Yeah. That record, it just attracts so much attention, and it's probably it's the record that people make their opinion on. Like if you're like, I am going to listen to Rancid and decide if I want to listen to all of their discography or what, and you listen to that record, and I think it's probably a decent yes or no record. Like, can I deal with these voices or not? It's probably the main deciding factor. Yeah. So then it's just that record. It just has that like, oh, you gotta listen to that record. You gotta listen to and Out Come the Wolves, and then
Yeah.
no one ever really says, oh, listen to the record that came after it, because it's like an incredible ska record for most of the runtime.
Yeah. I think And Out Come the Wolves is their best record, but this is my favorite one. I tend to like that, that Wilderness record from most of the artists that I stick with for my whole, just for whatever reason. I'm like Green Day Warning, or like one of the weird ass AFI records. That sort of thing I always find more interesting than the one that got him to that spot.
Yeah.
So.
And you hit up on it earlier when you were talking about when you first heard it, but like the record that comes out after you get into the band,
yes,
is often like the one that you have like a extra special place for.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not your favorite, it's you still regard it very closely. Like I can do with nearly any band I've ever listened to. Like the one that came out after I learned their discography, that means a lot to me just because of when it came out and everything. So, which is an interesting phenomenon because that's different for everyone for the most part. Like not everybody's gonna have everybody will go, yeah, Wolves, that's the best Rancid record, but like not everybody has the first. Well, that was the new one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a number of things. Like obviously entry point is something, but the first time you can remember anticipating something from this, or like there's excitement built up. I remember, Radiohead. I'm a huge Radiohead fan, but when OK Computer came out, I had gotten like the one before that in a budget bin and loved it. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is coming, and like the build up for album releases back in the day was just, it was so painful because you're a teenager and, every minute is a larger percent of your life than it is now. And it's just, it's neat, like it gives a little bit of a grand event vibe to an album release,
Yeah. It's a
lot of times that record that comes out when you're like new to a band that you really like, that you're like hot and heavy with, you end up spending the most time with that record because you're just like, this is my, I get to be involved with this record from the beginning.
That's true. That's a good point. Or, like the albums that you used to, I mean, certainly for me, but when I would like spend $17.99 on an album, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to love this album. And I'm going to force myself. Didn't always take.
Yeah.
But this one, when I first heard it, I was like, this is not an Out Come the Wolves. But the more time I spent with it, I was like, no, this is something else. And I like it more.
Yeah.
But it took a minute. It was a grower, but.
Yeah. Which it's hard to think of like what you would even call this. I like your term, like the In the Wilderness record, as far as taking a chance and doing something different. Because I feel like any band with like an extensive discography has that moment in their career.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes it doesn't work. And then the band will be like, retreat, back to like the safety of like, what's the last thing we did that people liked? Okay, we're going to do that again.
The Bad Religion trick,
Yeah. We disavow that record. It doesn't exist.
I think that this is a record where they stepped into the wilderness. But I do think maybe as Rancid, they retreated to a more familiar sound or a little, not reaching as far track to track. But then they did other things, that are in line with all of the things that they did on this record. So it's much as it's like for the band, it's a step into the wilderness. For the musicians in the band, it's almost like a personal catalog of like, oh, here are all the things that I'm into.
Yeah. Do you think this was like, so I'm always intrigued by this idea, especially with long running bands, albums being a reaction. Like, do you think this is more a reaction to the fans or a reaction to themselves, especially after Life Won't Wait? They go back, write their leanest record. It's kind of nasty. It's fast. It's heavy. I sometimes I wonder, I'm like, I didn't read any reviews, how it was critically received, or if like fans were a little more lukewarm with it, or if maybe some of this is really difficult to pull off live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Everything I read it was fairly well regarded. I think most of the reviews were pretty positive, which though I could see if you look at the Rancid discography that this would be like the critics album because it shows them like exploring different things, you know?
Yeah.
Critics tend to like those more than the audiences do. But I think it's still pretty well regarded amongst the fans, like as far as like, it's a good record. And I think the biggest complaint is that it's just too long, but
yeah, most records are.
Yeah. And also that's a good friend Corey told me that too. He was like, it's kind of their thing. All their records are really long. Like even like the Wolves is 47 minutes, like which I'm like,
it's too long.
That's long. That's
yeah.
For a punk record? Yeah.
For a punk record, yeah.
So I think the length is earned on this album.
Yeah.
Just because of the variety of things they're trying here. So I don't know. It may be not the one that people reach for the most, but I think it's one that is a rewarding listen for fans of the band.
I agree.
On the note of its length, it is on paper too long. It was too long for my commute to work. But what I will say, and not just because I had to keep listening to it, because I had to do the homework for the show. When I got to work, I kept listening to it. Like I just kept my headphones in until it was done and did my like prep at the beginning of my shift. Like I didn't want to turn it off. Like I was still fully invested in listening to the record. I could have easily been like, all right, I'll finish this tomorrow. Like if I wasn't feeling it, or was getting tired of it, that's absolutely what I would have done. But there is something compelling about the record through its entire runtime that says like, no, just keep listening. Like you're enjoying this. Just ride this flow.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things being too long, we may have done the Life Won't Wait of podcasts for this one because I'm pretty sure.
I bought a lot of
We're pretty close to 2 hours, I think, recording wise. Dylan,
wow, really?
What's the time on yours?
It's 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Recording. So
some of that we'll cut, obviously, but yeah.
Like
this line where I said we'll cut
dropouts.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's final thoughts. It's a really good record. I would say it's just a really good exploration of a band in their prime, you know?
Yeah. Throwing so many things at the wall and almost every one of them stuck.
Yeah.
I'm going to revisit Crane Fist again just to make sure I still feel the same way.
But like, that stuck to a different project. The Transplants existed.
That's true.
It worked for Garnier Fructis commercials,
Hey, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I love that they used that song for so long in their ad campaign too.
Incredibly long. Yeah.
Because I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, huh? I know that song.
Yep. Like I think Skinhead Rob is in a shampoo commercial. That's insane.
He doesn't need this.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for doing the show. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. Always love being on. And
we definitely will not wait another year and a half before we have you back on to do an episode.
Anytime, my friends. Honor is all mine, of course.
Anything you want to plug social media wise or anything like that?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Go check out everything on No Echo, not just by me. There's some amazing writers. So
one of the best curated, I think is a good way to describe No Echo. It's so well done. I just love everything on that site.
And Carlos never sleeps. I truly don't understand it. I don't understand it. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you for listening. And we'll see you later.